Hello friends, this is Mike Williams of the Sage of Quay Radio Hour. I recently had the pleasure of joining Sofia Smallstorm as a guest on her radio show. We took a deeper dive into a recent video exposé called Is Miley Cyrus Baphomet? It's an excellent analysis by YouTuber Paul Romano, who pulls the curtain back to expose the occult symbolism which is hidden in plain sight and intended to manipulate mass consciousness. Paul's YouTube channel is Pockets of the Future, and I highly recommend you visit his channel and subscribe. In my conversation with Sofia, we discuss what Baphomet represents, along with other symbols and sigils used by the puppet masters to deceptively manipulate the minds of the unknowing masses in order to achieve the nefarious objective of full-spectrum dominance over humanity. I would like to thank Sofia for allowing me to upload this podcast, and without further ado, here's the show. Enjoy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Sofia Smallstorm here with another podcast. I have my very good friend, I hope I can call him that because I feel that way about you, Mike. Mike Williams, the Sage of Quay. And we're going to chat again about some disturbing developments on planet Earth.
We are, and you can call me a good friend, that's fine.
Gee, thanks.
I'm teasing.
So we were going to start with this behavior of one Miley Cyrus.
Right.
Miley Cyrus is now acting in her public performances like Baphomet, the half-goat, half-man. Some consider it a satanic entity. I believe Miley is contemplating getting some real horns put in her skull, right? Some kind of horn thing?
I don't know. I hadn't heard that, but she does her hair up that way, that's for sure. Yeah.
No, that's just the harmless version now, with her little ponytails in the strategic locations. But I read on the internet, Miley Cyrus is going to get some horns embedded of some kind.
Okay, well, that doesn't surprise me.
She won't be able to do any more headstands.
Without it being painful.
So go ahead, Mike. Tell us what you are thinking about in relation to this madness.
Well, the first thing is, before we get started, Sophia, I just want to let the audience know that I'm not an expert in the occult, but I've researched the occult over the years to a degree where I feel I have a foundational understanding of the occult and their symbolism. And also my understanding of hypnosis, because as you know, I'm a hypnotherapist. That helps a lot in understanding how the mind can be shaped through repetition and through imagery, which is what's going on with these occult practices today. We're getting a lot of repetition, we're getting a lot of imagery, and a lot of it is not always hidden. As an example, it's in the media, these music shows and so on. So it's out there. If you don't know about it, you may think it's hidden, but they're hiding it in plain sight. So there is a lot of imagery. There's a lot of occult imagery that's being portrayed and put out for public consumption. A lot of celebrities like Miley Cyrus, Bruce Jenner, and Madonna, many, many others are part and parcel of getting that type of imagery and that type of communication, that type of conditioning out to the public, out to the masses, to shape what I call the collective consciousness, so that they, and I talk about they, I mean the controllers, can steer their ship in the direction that they want to steer it. As I go through this, as we talk about it, I'm just going to mention two sources of information that I personally find to be very good and that helped me put this show together. One is The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Miley P. Hall. The book was published in 1928. Miley P. Hall at the time was a young man. It's 750 pages, but it's essentially everything you want to know about the occult and mysticism. It's a fantastic book, a great resource. And also there was an article back in 2011 on a website, a great website called Vigilant Citizen. And the title of the article was Who is Baphomet? And I found that to be an excellent, excellent article. And they kind of cut to the chase in around 6 pages or so, but it's very informative. And much of what I'm going to discuss, I've culled from those 2 resources.
Mike, is that article still available, The Vigilant Citizen?
It is still available. So if you do a Google search or whatever your search engine is, if you type in Vigilant Citizen, Who is Baphomet, that article will pop right up.
And who published the Manly Hall book, may I ask?
Oh, I'd have to go back. Let me see, Sophia. Hold on one second. In fact, I have the book right here. It's a huge, huge book. Well, it looks like the Penguin Group.
Very interesting. And the title again, please?
The Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Wow, so that's kind of a harmless title.
It is a harmless title, but the content contained within it is staggering. Manly P. Hall was, for those who don't know, was a leading scholar in the field of religion, mythology, mysticism, and the occult. He was also a 33-degree Mason. And as a young man in his 20s, I believe he was in his 20s when he put that book together, it's astounding what he has there.
And you know, we don't know if Penguin Publishing Group isn't a Masonic entity itself, because all these things now, these entities, these corporations, these publishing houses, movie studios, they're all putting stuff out that's really, you know, it's all going the same way.
Yeah, they're putting it out there, and for those who are intrepid enough to read it and understand it, that's fine. I don't think that they feel that that's going to hurt them in any way. I'm talking about Penguin Publishing or any of the groups tied to it. We want to talk about the Masonic groups, because I believe, Sophia, they feel that the information is so overwhelming that even for somebody who is deeply into the research, it will take so long just to understand the content. And that's not even tying it all together, connecting the dots to make something of it. So, I don't think that they believe that they're exposed in any way. So that's why I think a lot of this stuff is going out there. It's being distributed. And again, the vast majority of people will never read something like The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, because it's a 750-page book. And most people, they just, they don't have the appetite or the desire to dive into something like that.
Well, since all they do is send little one-line texts to one another, they could never, ever, ever get through that book. That's for damn sure.
Exactly. And then once you get through it, then like I said, the next step is, okay, now I have all this information. I have to digest it. I have to understand it even more. And then how do I put it all together and connect the dots so that it really means something? And I think that, that can take lifetimes to do something like that. And that's why all these bloodlines and these people that are involved in these secret societies like the Freemasons and so on, it's all bloodline based, and all of this stuff is taught lifetime after lifetime, generation after generation, and you are born and bred into the system. And that becomes their education versus the education that the profane or the uninitiated receive, which would be you, me, and everybody else.
So, Mike, that book, coupled with your training, let's call it, as a hypnotherapist, creates for you a more magnified context than the average reader, perhaps.
Yes, because I've come to understand, Sophia, through my research and with being a master hypnotherapist, that the mind can be shaped and the mind can be conditioned to behave a certain way, to have a certain belief system, a certain system of values, and so on. And if you are continually subjected to a certain type of environment, imagery, what happens is you become conditioned. They're called habituated patterns. And you continue to operate within that circle or that wheel. And that becomes your life. And I always tell folks that your thoughts create your reality. And when we talk about these secret societies and we talk about, sigils, and because Baphomet, in my view, is a sigil. It's a depiction of, I would say, a compiling of various very intricate aspects of the mystery religions and of the occult. Baphomet unto itself is not good or bad. It is representative of the mystery religions and of the occult or initiate or adept ways of thinking. It has been put out there to the masses as referring to something that is evil and dark and so on. And it could be that. It's just that it depends upon the intent of the people that are using these sigils, using these symbols, using this imagery. If their intent is bad, then whatever it is that they're putting out will reflect that darkness. If good is putting the same types of things out, then what you're going to have is you're going to have symbols and sigils and imagery that will reflect goodness, and it will take humanity in a different direction. Unfortunately, today, the people that are controlling, they are on the dark side, and they're using these symbols, they're using these sigils and the imagery and the conditioning to manifest what they want, which essentially is service to self. It's it's nihilism. It's what I call dark existentialism. This is what they participate in, and they know that thoughts are energy, and they can manipulate energy. They can manipulate thoughts in a certain direction, and that's going to manifest a certain reality. And if they get the collective consciousness in a certain direction, and they don't need everybody, they just need a critical mass to think a certain way, to move a certain way, then the reality that the controllers want to manifest, that they want to put in place, it will manifest. And that's what's going on today.
Mike, it surprises me actually to hear you say that the symbol itself is neither good nor bad, but I can accept that intellectually. And yet it's the source with the intention that is put on that symbol, that issues that symbol outward, that makes it one thing or the other. Now, let me ask you, this Baphomet symbol it's a little frightening and freaky to me. So what does that come from? My conditioning? Or, I mean, it's a goat and human mixed, and it has breasts, and then if you look in its lap, I never even saw this before. I have to say that I didn't even notice the breasts. I was just looking at the goat part, you know? But it was kind of sinister, and the breast and I didn't say what was in the lap, but it appears to be some symbolic depiction of an erection, of male penis. So
what's going on?
This? Yeah,
I'll try. I'll do the best I can, Sophia. Like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but I have done enough research where I think I can make some sense of it. And of course, if there are folks out there that are listening that can add a little bit more, feel free to email me. I'm open. But before we do that, let me just read a quote from Miley P. Hall out of the Secret Teachings of All Ages to kind of put a perspective around what we're going to get into with regard to the imagery of Baphomet. So Miley P. Hall, in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, says, with the decline in virtue, which has preceded the destruction of every nation in history, the mysteries became perverted. The mystery religions he's talking about. Sorcery took the place of a divine magic. Indescribable practices were introduced, and perversion ruled supreme, for no institution can be any better than the members of which it is composed. So what Miley P. Hall is saying here is that when we talk about the mystery religions, and we talk about initiates, and we talk about the adepts from many, many years ago, we're talking about those that were involved in divine magic. But what's happened is that sorcery has taken its place, that those with dark hearts and dark minds have taken the power of the mystery religions, the understanding, the teachings, and the wisdom, and they perverted it. Okay, so with that, I'll explain a little bit about Baphomet. And what I'm going to do, Sophia, if you don't mind, I'm going to read from some notes so I don't miss anything here, and I'll bounce all over the place on you. Baphomet, also known as the goat of Mendes, and that is Egyptian symbolism. So when they talk about the goat of Mendes, they're talking about Egyptian symbolism, is a goat-headed figure found in the history of occultism. And it goes back to the Knights Templar in the Middle Ages and the Freemasons of the 19th century, and of course it's in today's occultism. Baphomet is misunderstood and interpreted by many as being evil. Baphomet is an intricate representation of esoteric symbolism used by adepts and initiatives in the occult or in the mystery religions. So, and when we talk about the occult or the mystery religions in this context, we're talking about what Miley P. Hall referred to as divine magic. Now, as with any symbolism, there is positive application and there's negative application. And when I talk about symbols, I'm typically referring to sigils. And sigils are inscribed or painted symbols which are considered to have magical powers. And we have sigils around us everywhere. So when you take a look at the branding of an automobile as an example, that's a sigil. One that comes to mind that I think folks can relate to is if you look at a truck, a Dodge Ram, and you take a look at the back of the truck or even the front of the truck and you see the symbol of what is supposed to be a ram. It's not a ram, it's Baphomet. So you have Dodge putting the Baphomet sigil on their trucks. And the idea or the premise behind sigils is that the sigil, if focused on, and if there's a high level of concentration on that particular symbol, that it will manifest. It will manifest the result of whoever it is that has put the sigil out there. So in the case of Dodge, as an example, we'll use a very basic premise is perhaps they have Baphomet on their truck on a Dodge Ram for the sole purpose of selling more trucks. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that Dodge is putting evil on their trucks. You have to understand it in the context of a sigil.
Wait. First of all, the ram, is Baphomet a ram or a goat?
It's a goat. It's a goat. But what I'm saying is if you take a look at a Ram truck, if you take a look at Dodge Ram, if you do a Google search.
I'm looking at it.
Okay. Is that a Ram or does that look like Baphomet to you?
It does look like Baphomet. I mean, there's a one where it has like flames coming off it. And it's, so you're saying that Dodge is capitalizing on an icon that the public has seen before.
Right.
It's a powerful icon.
Right.
And it's counting on this icon when associated with its Ram truck to perhaps boost sales or increase appreciation on the part of the public for its truck, right?
Exactly.
So no one has told Dodge, hey, you put that thing on your truck as the logo. Right?
Right. I don't think anybody's told them to do that, but what people have to understand is that they are very well aware of these sigils. They're very well aware of these mysteries. They're very well aware of how to manipulate consciousness. So it's not a matter of people just guessing at this stuff or being evil or so on. I mean, they're putting this stuff out there because their intent is to shift your consciousness, is to shift your focus and your concentration. The belief is that when that happens, when thoughts are in a certain direction and the thoughts are very focused and concentrated in that direction, then the reality will manifest. And that's what they're doing. So if you take, and another example would be, another sigil would be, take a look at the Bank of America. The Bank of America, their sigil is 3 11s. And most people don't even realize that it's 11, 11, 11, or 33. Okay?
Let me look up that.
Yeah, take a look at the Bank of America, and you'll see that it's nothing more than 3 11s.
I know exactly what you're talking about, that diamond kind of lying on its back.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Wow.
All right, so these are all sigils that are out there, and this is what's going on. And so it's pervasive, Sophia. I mean, it's all around us. It's everywhere, absolutely everywhere. If you take a look at Shell Oil as an example, I mean, their sigil is what most people believe to be a shell, but it's not a shell. It goes back to ancient Egyptian sun worship. It's actually the sun with the sun's rays. If you take a look at the Saturn car, take a look at their sigil or their emblem on the car, and what is it? It is a depiction of the planet Saturn. So you have all of this esoteric symbolism out there, and the reason why it's out there, again, is so that it can shape your thoughts, it can shape consciousness, and it can move people and their thoughts into a particular direction. In some cases, it might be to Bank of America. It might be to buy a Saturn car. It might be to buy more Ram trucks, So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's sinister. A lot of people apply a sinister veneer on these things, but I'm here to say that, at least my research, that may not be the case. I'm not saying there are instances where it's not sinister or it's not dark, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It's based upon the intent of the people or the group that are putting it out there. If the intent is good or somewhat good, and it's going to wind up being a sigil for something good. But if it's dark and the intent is dark, then it's going to move the consciousness and the thought into a darker place.
Okay, so I looked up while you were talking the Dodge Ram thing. In 1929, rising young sculptor Avard T. Fairbanks, he was the one who came up with these designs. He put the Plymouth Flying Lady on for Chrysler Corporation as a radiator cap ornament. And it was a huge success. It was called a floating mermaid on the waves. So he was very, he was given commendation for that. But these are Art Deco motifs we hear from this article or learn from it. And I'll post it. And then I'm scrolling down, and he was given the idea from Art Deco motifs for Chrysler to design an animal ornament. So he said, I suggested a mountain lion, a tiger, a jaguar, other animals. Finally, I started modeling a mountain sheep. When the engineers read that the ram was the master of the trail and not afraid of even the wildest of animals, they became enthusiastic about the symbol. Walter P. Chrysler wasn't as convinced. But I explained, this is Fairbanks, that anyone seeing a ram with its big horns would think, Dodge. He looked at me, looked at the model, scratched his head, and said, that's what I want. Go ahead with it. And so they put it on the Dodge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I almost feel like this is a simple story that's skipping an awful lot.
Yeah, so they're not going to tell you that it's a sigil. They're not going to tell you that there is an esoteric underlying current behind what they've done. They're just not going to do that, right? First of all, most people won't even get it. And the other thing is, these are secret societies, and these are people that are involved in secret societies, and they're not about to let the cat out of the bag.
So you're saying that this sigil is a mystery sigil. It's a symbol of divinity originally, and it's being assigned a different kind of character by the users of it in this time in our world.
Right. You can look at it almost in the vein of archetypes, right? So as an example, a lot of folks will look at the triangle, right? And they say, oh, the triangle is bad. You know, the triangle is the Illuminati. The triangle represents, controllers and evil. But the triangle is an archetype. The triangle represents balance, synthesis, union, sharpness, intellect. So from an archetype perspective, that's what the triangle represents. So they then take the triangle and they twist it and they pervert it, and they make that sigil fit what it is that they want to do or what their goals and objectives are. And then they work very hard to try to manipulate the mass consciousness to go in that direction. And that's really all it is. So like if somebody says, is there good energy, is there bad energy? And the answer to that would be, well, it's neither. Energy is energy. It's the intent and the purpose behind that energy that's going to result in whether it's good or bad. It's like saying, is there good electricity or bad electricity? No, electricity is just electricity. Now, you can use an electricity to heat your house, or you can use electricity to electrocute somebody, right? So it depends upon the intent. And that's the thing with everything that goes on around us. That's the whole thing behind, the premise behind the esoteric and the occult, is that it's the manipulation of energy to get what they want. And as I mentioned earlier, that's what we have today. We have people who are controlling worldwide these secret societies, and unfortunately, the overriding intent is not good for humanity. It is a mindset of service to self. It's nihilism, and that's where they're steering the planet, and that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing playing out.
So these animals that are depicted in these slightly, what I've come to realize or to feel are scary, sinister ways. They're just animals on the earth, right? Rams and the mermaid I would question a little bit, because that's like the Baphomet creation. That's a composite.
Right.
The mermaid is half fish and half woman, and Baphomet is a half goat and half man. So there's no difference. I mean, there are little girls who just, they swoon over mermaids. They want to be a mermaid. It's a little girl fantasy, just like having a pony is a fantasy for them. So Baphomet, I shouldn't characterize Baphomet as evil if I'm not frightened of mermaids. So culturally, we've made certain composites out of animal and human, and they're being used now in ways that seem innocuous or seem sinister, depending on who's using them.
Right, exactly. So as an example, when you take a look at Baphomet, Baphomet has its roots from pagan gods. So we're talking about Pan, Hathor, even the devil, right? So what you're seeing is you're seeing, like, when you take a look at Baphomet's head, people are like, oh, that's really ugly. But Baphomet's head, what that represents, the ugly goat's head, is man's sinful nature. That's what it means. So when you see the pentagram on the forehead of Baphomet, you see the top of the pentagram pointing up. That's pointing up to the light, enlightenment. The head is man's, I should say, man, when I mean man, I'm talking about humanity's sinful nature. There's one female arm, there's one male arm. Baphomet has female breasts. It has a male phallus. And so what you have there is androgyny, right? So in Baphomet, you have this androgynous type of character going on. Now, in occultism, the concept of androgyny is of great importance because in occult philosophy, it represents the highest level of initiation in the quest of becoming one with God. Now, somebody can agree with that or disagree with that. All I'm expressing is, what does it mean? So when you take a look at these pictures, some of these things might look creepy. You might not understand them. They look kind of strange and abstract. But once you start digging into it, you start to understand that all these little piece parts, it's like looking at a picture on a tarot card. Everything in a tarot card has meaning. And I'm not an expert on the tarot card, but I know enough to know that when you look at a tarot card, you're just not looking at stuff that just happens to be put there by happenstance. Everything is placed there because everything has a particular meaning from an occult perspective. And when I talk about occult, we're talking about hidden. We're not talking about dark. I just want to make that clear to the audience because occult has also been used in a way in which it means that it's dark, it's black magic, and so on. Could it be? Yes. But could it not be? Yes. So that's the thing.
So in this androgynous definition that you just gave, and that the highest level of connection to God is through androgyny, it's kind of like celibacy, the way monks and nuns vow to be celibate so they can devote themselves to this relationship with God.
Yeah,
so
yeah. I'm sorry. And I was going to say, Sophia, the way I looked at it, and again, I'm giving you my interpretation based upon my research. I'm not an expert on this, but when I research into the androgynous aspects of Baphomet, what I'm thinking is it's taking man away from the carnal types of behaviors, the physical, sexual aspects, right? Stuff that's in the lower chakras, like the root chakra, and it's trying to elevate man through the kundalini up through the chakras. In fact, the phallic symbol on Baphomet with the two serpents intertwined, that is the chakra. See, so it's going from the root up to the crown chakra, and what you're seeing there is the kundalini. And that is what's being represented there on Baphomet. So you could start to see now that there's a lot of spiritual aspects that are built into this picture. Unfortunately, most people don't know what it all means. It just seems very strange and very bizarre to them. And because of that, they either just don't pay attention to it or they label it as something as bad or evil. But I mean, again, I'm giving you my perspective on it. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right. I'm sure there's going to be people out there listening that would like to debate and argue with me over how I'm expressing this.
Right. So you're taking the long view through history and telling us that at one time this symbol, which is a construct or a composite of different elements, did not mean what conspiracy theorists and Illuminati hunters take it to mean today.
Right. Right. What they'll say is the researchers today, the conspiracy, researchers and the Illuminati researchers will say, it's evil, it's satanic, it's Luciferian, and perhaps that is what Baphomet is being used today. And I will most likely agree that yes, that particular sigil, that symbol is being used for those purposes. But is that what Baphomet really represents? And the answer is no. The answer is it's how it's being utilized by this particular group. So tomorrow we could turn around and we can have benevolent secret societies, and then the use of these sigils and Baphomet and so on will mean something completely different.
So can I jump to Miley Cyrus?
Yeah, if you'd like to. I just have one more thing, though, to say about Baphomet, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Baphomet embodies the culmination of the alchemical process, and that's the union of opposing forces to create what they refer to as astral light or illumination. So this is considered the basis of magic and ultimately enlightenment. So when we talk about the alchemical process, many people know it as turning stone into gold, as an example. But in esoteric terms, what it's referring to is taking a profane man, somebody who is uninitiated, who is not an adept, and taking them into an illuminated state. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I put that out there too, because the alchemical aspect of it is very important when we're talking about Baphomet.
Now you've pretty much flattened my line of questioning, because I thought Baphomet was bad. See, that just comes from my ignorance and fear. I'm very ignorant and fearful of sigils. I do happen to know, I'm half kidding, I do happen to know that the triangle is considered the most stable geometric form, and it's the most stable form in the universe, they say. So naturally, it might be co-opted by the bad guys and used as their most prominent geometrical shape.
Right.
So, I mean, I suppose anyone can take anything and use it. I can go outside and pick up a stone, do anything I want with it. So could you, if you got to the stone first, right?
Right.
So these are just like tools and parts of our history lying around. And they've been, as you said in the beginning of the show, they've been reassigned by different users.
That's right.
So that's actually quite interesting. So now can we talk about Miley?
We can.
Okay. So when Miley Cyrus gets up on a stage and does a video, which you posted on your blog, she's not doing a video, excuse me, she's doing a performance in which she is very scantily dressed and she's wearing some kind of strap-on thing on her front that is meant to depict Baphomet's erection, and she has some weird breasts, and the guy who made the comments about this performance in a video. His name, I believe, is Paul
Romano. Yeah.
Romano, yes. He has some very interesting things to say, but it does strike us. I meant to add that he has blotted out the naughty parts, and he does say that this is disturbing, that this is behavior being modeled, transgender, gender fluidity, modeling for the audiences. And this is where I want you to help in explaining the trans nature of audiences as they take such a performance in, and wherever you want to go with it.
Okay, so what you have with Miley Cyrus, and I'll also talk a little bit about Bruce Jenner afterwards, but with Miley Cyrus, what you really have is a walking, talking sigil. Again, remember what I said earlier, Sophia, is that what they're looking to have happen is a high level of focus and concentration on that particular symbolism, that sigil, that imagery, which happens to be Miley Cyrus and what she represents. So if we take a look at Baphomet and we say that Baphomet is, a sigil that encompasses ultimately the alchemical process of taking the profane to enlightenment, well, the profane to enlightenment part of it is not you or me or the audience. It's the controllers. It is the secret societies. It is the elites. It's the people at the very top of the pyramid. In order for them to get there, they have to constantly make sure that they get the thought energies and the focus of of the masses, the consciousness, to move in that direction so that they, I'm talking about they, I'm talking about the controls, they can obtain what it is that they want. Okay? It's not about what the audience wants. And one of the things with sigil magic that is very important is that you get people to focus and concentrate and meditate on that particular outcome. And by doing so, the basis of the magic is that the outcome that the controllers or the magician is looking to have manifest, it will manifest. And that's why you have all of this out there. What they're doing is they're putting these sigils, they're personifying them, they're animating them, they're making it so that people are completely engaged and focused and concentrating on them. And that ultimately what's going to happen is the reality that these controllers and these magicians want to have manifest, it will come to be. Now, some people may scoff at that and laugh at that and think it's a bunch of nonsense, but it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what they think, because they are controlling and they're putting it out there. And I'm going to put this out there also. If folks are going to scoff at it, all you need to do is take a look around you and take a look at how society is functioning in a very dysfunctional state. How did it get like that? It got like that by doing the things that they're doing with Miley Cyrus, with Bruce Jenner, with Madonna, and so on and so forth. So that's what's happening with Miley Cyrus. And then if you notice, she sticks her tongue out all the time. The tongue aspect of it, you can see that in the pictures, right? If you take a look at on the internet. That has to do with the Hindu goddess Kali. It's Kali. And the Hindu goddess Kali is associated with empowerment. Now, a few months ago, in New York City, they had projected the goddess Kali on the Empire State Building. And many people wrote on blogs and websites and did videos on YouTube and said that this was evil and dark because Kali is the goddess of destruction. And that is not the case at all. If you talk to those who are experts in the Hindu mysticism, they'll tell you that Kali has nothing to do with evil. The goddess Kali represents time. She's the goddess of time and change and power and creation. She's the goddess of change and transformation. So here again, we have another situation where there's a depiction of a goddess. We'll call her a sigil. And people are misinterpreting it to mean that this bad stuff's going to happen. Now, I'm not saying that the Illuminati or whoever it is, the controllers are, the secret societies that are involved in the dark magic and those types of practices, that they're not intending a change or a transformation to be what we would consider to be not good. I mean, it's definitely going, in my view, that's where they're going. But my point being is the goddess Kali herself does not mean that. Does not mean bad. It does not mean dark. It just means change and transformation. So again, we have another situation where they're putting this symbolism out there and they're using it for perverse reasons.
Well, let me ask you a couple of things. I'm going to go back a few minutes, and I took some notes. So you said the people who are using these sigils want large numbers of people, us, to focus, concentrate, meditate on particular outcomes. And those outcomes will manifest. You were very emphatic. Because that is the controller's intention.
Right.
So I'm surprised that one can be so profoundly convicted that something will happen just because they want it to. I mean, that doesn't seem like real life to me. But I understand. So I'm going to ask you this. In having large numbers of people concentrate, look at, that could mean absorb themselves in a spectacle, for instance, Miley Cyrus performing, this ensures a particular outcome because it affects the subconscious mind of all these people and there's a group energy. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. So what you have is your thoughts create reality. And a lot of people are going to find this to be very difficult to get their heads wrapped around. Your thoughts create your reality. And this is what they know. This is what magicians know. So you have thought energy. And if you can manipulate that thought energy and you can direct it in a certain direction, steer it, what happens is you create a reality that thought energy is focused on, is concentrating on. So if you think of it in this way, let me just see if I can kind of take it back a little basic for the folks. Everything that's been created in the world has been the result of somebody's imagination. Everything in the world has been created based upon a thought that somebody had that, gee, wouldn't this be good if we had this? So there had to be a thought, and the imagination had to come into play to develop the car, to be able to develop the light bulb, the telephone, the computer, and so on and so forth. Now, if you take it at a much higher level, then if you take all of that thought energy and you aggregate it and you consolidate it and you put it together and you make it very, very focused, what can you do with that? What's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is you're going to create and manifest a particular situation, circumstance, or, again, like it's like a broken record, but a reality. This is, in my view, Sophia, is what happened on 9/11. On 9/11 was an experiment in steering consciousness in order to create an outcome. So the magicians and the controllers, they know that if we can get enough people to have their thoughts focused in a certain way on a certain topic or subject in a very specific direction, we will move in that direction. And so with 9/11, I think a lot of what people miss is that it was an experiment. It was an experiment in the esoteric to move the general public or population, the masses, where they needed them to be. And where they needed them to be is exactly where we're at today, which is shifting the focus on perpetual war. It is to accept perpetual war for most people. It is to adopt certain principles, which to you and I may be anathema, but to a lot of folks, they embrace it. Many, many folks embrace it. And so that moving of thought, that moving of the thought energy into that place, into that direction, has resulted in what we are experiencing today, 14 years after 9/11, 2001. Take a look at where the world is at. Now, somebody might argue, well, maybe they could have done that without doing 9/11. Well, maybe. But I'm going to say that without 9/11 and without that shock to the consciousness, the collective consciousness of the world, that it would have been a lot more difficult to do. So that trauma to the collective consciousness and steering everybody's attention into that place, which was war, Islamic fundamentalists, all of the imperialism that's taking place, they needed to springboard it. And that's what took place on 9/11. And it's the same thing with all of these false flags that take place today. I mean, this is all habituated patterns. It's getting people's thoughts in a certain direction, getting people to believe it, getting people to consume it, getting people to embrace it, getting people to agree with it. And by that happening, again, this is manipulation of the consciousness. They're going to get what they want. They're going to get what they want, unless the brakes get put on and people understand that they are being manipulated. So, and we talked about this in one of the shows, Sophia, is what we have going on here is a perpetual motion machine of manipulation of the consciousness. And this is because they understand how reality works.
So you're really saying that in prepping the mass mind toward embedding certain visuals and a certain kind of fear and apprehension, and then showing and re-showing scenes of terror and fear, just moving the mass mind in one direction. Okay, so here's my question. It actually creates the outcome, or it supports methodologies that are for that outcome, that make that outcome?
Well, the actual plan of how you would like the outcome to be, that is the thought of, let's just say, of the controllers, or we'll call them the black magicians, for lack of a better term, right? They're involved in this because it's evil stuff. But they can't make it real. They can't make it exist until the collective consciousness puts it into play. Otherwise, it won't exist. So just imagine if 9/11 happened and nobody bought into 19 hijackers with box cutters. Suppose that on that day, the vast majority of the consciousness said it was an inside job, and nobody bought into it. Would we have the same situation we have today going on with the wars in the Middle East and so on? I mean, we have to ask ourselves that question. Some people might say, yeah, we might, and I'm going to argue that we probably would not, at least not to the degree that we have it today. So they have to be able to manipulate. This is why, Sophia, otherwise they would just do things. There's a reason why they have to convince you, to convince the public and the masses that they need to go do something, that this is the right thing to do, that this is the reason why politicians like David Cameron and Barack Obama get on, behind podiums and start spewing their rhetoric. There's a reason why they have to convince you, and it's because they need that thought energy. They need that consciousness to flow in the direction they need it to flow.
Okay, I'm understanding this a little bit because on the face of it, it seems like if they can get a lot of people looking at something or thinking about something, then that thing will actually happen. Like, a magical will actually happen, which is, to me, something that doesn't seem rooted in reality, because you could extrapolate from it and say, well, if I visualize enough that I'm going to live in a big mansion someday and all my bills will be paid and I won't have to worry about anything, that will happen too, right? So what's the difference between those two things? I'm not asking you to say, oh, if 1 million people focus on something, then it will happen, because it's conjured out of dimensional interweavings, You want to say something?
No, I was going to say that it comes down to intention. You have to have intention. Let's just take it at the individual level. Now, many people can improve their lives by having an intention to do something very positive, but then it's not just the intention. Like if you read certain books in the New Age movement, it's, a lot of it is very ridiculous. What happens with the New Age movement, as an example, there's a lot of truths within the New Age movement. It's also loaded up with a lot of misguided misinformation and just rubbish, quite honestly. But so they'll tell you that if you stick a picture of a big house under your pillow when you sleep on it, that, ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to manifest that big house. Well, it doesn't work that way. So what has to happen is not only do you have to have the intention, but you have to then make it kinetic. In other words, you have to do things to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just not going to fall on your lap. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to sleep for 3 years with a big house under your pillow, and that's going to be it. So people can make vast improvements in their life just by getting their mind to be in a certain place. Now, I know this because, just take it back a little bit. In my hypnotherapy practice, I work with a lot of folks on various types of issues. And what it's all about, Sophia, is it's called reframing the perspective of the mind, of the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind, think of your unconscious mind as like a big hard drive. And then when you have certain events in your life, those events drop files onto your hard drive. Those files are stored on that hard drive, and then whenever you reach or engage in a certain situation or circumstance, those files are given up to the conscious mind, and that determines how you react or behave in a certain circumstance or situation. And by the way, it doesn't have to be an exact match. If it's close, good enough type of thing. Now, if somebody's having behavior that is undesirable for them, as an example, let's just say, they want to stop smoking, then what I would do is I go back, have a session with that person. I take them back in time to when they first started smoking. And then what I do is I actually go about changing that memory. In other words, I alter that memory. That memory of when you first started smoking is no longer a memory. That's not the memory anymore. That's your starting point. That memory that I'm going to help you imagine as the initial memory is going to be a memory of a person that does not smoke and has never smoked. And then once the person starts there where I've never smoked, and then they move forward in time, you progress them as a non-smoker. From that point in time, let's say they started smoking when they were 15, let's say they're 40 today. And then from 40, I ask them to project out 20 years to when they're 60 as a non-smoker. What's happening is the mind now is adjusting. The mind is taking in this, even though it's imaginary, it becomes real to the mind. And the person will leave the session after 2 sessions as a non-smoker. And you're having folks that have come in, they'll tell me, Mike, I've tried everything, and I cannot quit smoking. I've been smoking for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And how could somebody who smoked for 30 or 40 years walk out of 2 sessions, 1 hour each, as a non-smoker? Well, that means that the mind is pliable. That's what it means. It means the mind can be shaped and conditioned to view things out of a specific lens. That lens could be a very positive lens, and that lens could be a negative lens. You see? So if you take that very basic premise, right, just from a hypnotherapy session where somebody's going to quit smoking, and then you extrapolate that out, and then you say, well, how would this work then if I want to do bigger and better things? If I bring all the minds together, the collective mindset together, and I have a collective consciousness then, and it's all focused and very concentrated on a very specific outcome, then I'm going to say that the odds of that outcome coming true or manifesting is far greater than if you hadn't done that.
Okay, so you're really saying that you're creating a connective tissue between the present and the future through this reframing of mind.
Right.
So I understand that. I understand the smoker example. This is all very good. It's all very promising and worthwhile. And when they trot Miley Cyrus out on a stage and she's behaving in some, bewildering manner, and she's got a bunch of props stuck to her, and she's sticking her tongue out and doing all these things that you think people don't understand this. They're all watching it and they don't know what they're looking at. So
Right.
How does that become this very powerful connective tissue then to the outcome?
It doesn't matter whether they understand it. What matters is that they are focused and meditating on it and concentrating on it. See, from a black magician perspective, they don't care they don't want you to understand. What they need is your thought energy. They need the energy. That's what they need. That's what they feed off of. And so however they get it, they're going to get it. And when they have it, then it's up to those that understand how this works. And I'll call them magicians, okay? It's up to these magicians then, once they have that energy collected and consolidated and where they want it, to then take it, use it, and send it off in a particular direction. It doesn't matter. See, it's like when people watch Miley Cyrus and they take that in, it's like when I read the quote in the beginning of the show that Manly P. Hall made in his book. They took this divine aspect, this divine magic, and they perverted it. And they've used sorcery instead. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing sorcery is in play. And they're utilizing the profane. They're using the unknowing masses in order to accumulate and direct that energy. And I realize this is going to be very difficult for some people to understand or get their heads wrapped around, because there is a huge metaphysical aspect to this. And if people just relegate their existence to the physicality of the world, the material world, then you're not going to understand this. It's not something that is going to make a lot of sense. But the one thing that these adepts and these initiatives and these magicians understand is that we are just on a plane of existence. This is one aspect of existence or reality. That they understand there are many dimensions. And in order to become enlightened, you have to be able to climb through and experience and evolve through the various dimensions in order to reach enlightenment. And that's ultimately what their goal is. Their goal is to become gods at the expense of everything and everyone else around them. And if I'm really out in left field on you, just let me know.
So their goal is to become multi-dimensional. They are travelers. They want to become travelers between the dimensions, so they can go from high to low. They can enable and demonstrate and manifest and enact things that it's stuck in this dimension. We call it the third dimension. We can't do.
Right.
Because we don't know how to leave the dimensions.
Right, we're stuck here. Now, I'll read this. Maybe this will help. There's a man by the name of Eliphas Levi. He is actually, the pictures that everybody sees of Baphomet today is a result of Eliphas Levi, a mystic going back into the 1800s. He wrote a book, I think it was 1897, called Dogmas and Rituals of High Magic. And he was a French occultist. And he had three principles, Sophia, Eliphas Levi. And those are in occultism and magic. They know who he is. He says the principle one is the first principle being that the material universe is only a small part of total reality. There are many other planes and modes of consciousness, and therefore full knowledge and awareness of the universe is only attained through experience of these other aspects of reality. Levi proposed that one of the most important aspects of reality is the astral light, a cosmic fluid, which may be molded by will, into physical forms. So he's calling it a cosmic fluid and astral light. I refer to it as a consciousness, which can be molded into physical forms or physical manifestations.
How fast?
That I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, if we look at linear time here on Earth, a long time, because we've been dealing with this nonsense as far as the controllers and the bloodlines, for well over 2,000 years. But what are we seeing today, though? We're seeing a speeding up, I think, of them trying to implement their agenda, and I think it's because of the technology that they have in place. Before it was a little difficult to be able to manipulate a collective consciousness because you didn't have a media. How would you do that? Mm-hmm. Today it's a lot easier because they can just put the hypnosis box in everybody's room called the television set, and they can have people focused on that, and they can just draw all their attention in. I mean, another occult ritual that was doing that, if you think back, was the London Olympics and all of the various occultism and sigils and symbolism that was going on there. Everything that they're doing today, all of these football games and these music award programs and these concerts is focused on this. It's extracting energy, it's extracting thought energy, and so that they can use it for their purposes in order to push their agenda forward.
So Mike, because you understand this, since you've described it to us in such an animated way, and you obviously know more about this than I do, for instance, and probably lots of people listening, this suggests that you, because you know this, are not quite as connected to it as everyone else. You have an awareness and you can disengage from your own participation in this to a greater degree than another person might be able to. But, I mean, are you alarmed by the fact that so many millions of people, either they do actively participate because they're watching it, or they don't even know about it, and they're, unknowingly, they're just like bystanders?
Yes, I'm very alarmed by it, Sophia, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist about it. I mean, it's just a reality of the situation. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I mean, I've done enough to be able to have the foundational aspects of this understood, and and I'm a neophyte compared to somebody who is really into occultism. In fact, people who are listening to this who are into occultism might even be laughing at what I'm saying, just saying, oh, he's at the tip of the iceberg, if even that. But I mean, to answer your question, yes. I mean, because I take a look around and I see what's going on, and you can see it. You can see it in people's actions. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their apathy and their denial, and just the general sense of just not being connected. A big aspect of this is people being connected back to the divine realms and back into their spirituality. They have to have that connectedness. And so what has happened with all of this dark occultism is they have intentionally detached people, disconnected them from their spirituality. They have disconnected them from their divine realms so that they don't get that understanding or that intuitive sense of what it is that they need to do or what it is they need to pay attention to. It's gone for a lot of people. Many people are too far gone. And so does it concern me? Yeah, it concerns me a lot. And that's why I do the things that I do, is to push back and to combat it as much as I can. And thank God there are people like yourself and many others out there that are doing the same thing. Whether people understand what I'm talking about tonight as far as, this thought energy and collective consciousness and steering it, if we just back it up a little bit and just make it even a little more basic, just becoming aware that you're being manipulated. Forget about the magic part of this or the occultism part of this. Become aware that you're being manipulated. that's going to go, in my view, a long way to helping to get humanity back to where it needs to be, to serve creation. I mean, that's really what we're here to do, is to serve creation. It's not service to self. And interestingly enough, I read, I don't know if you read this, but a few years back I read the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, and I read it on a lark, and I just wanted to understand what is it that Satanists really espouse. And some people will call Anton LaVey a carnival barker, and he wasn't the real deal. But you know what? I mean, he was out there for a reason. So he wrote the Satanic Bible. I believe it was written in the latter part of the 1960s. And the whole mindset of the Satanic Bible, when you read it, it's, believe it or not, it's not overly derogatory. It's not something that you're going to read and go, oh my God, it's disgusting. It's very interesting when you read it because, and I had to catch myself a couple of times as I was doing so, it is a Bible of how you serve yourself, and that the only thing that matters is you, is your objectives, is your goals. And when I read it, I remember thinking, he's describing a current day depiction of society and the culture that I live in today, that it's service to self. So in other words, we're living in this perverse world, and we're not living in a divine inspired world, right? So Satanists, as an example, if you take Baphomet, they turned the pentagram upside down. And as I mentioned before, if you look at Baphomet, the point of the star, of the pentagram, is pointing up toward the light, illumination. But Satanists take it and they turn it upside down. They pervert it. And the perversion of the star going down is to point to the carnal instincts, or the physical, especially the sexual needs and activities of man. And it's the opposite of spiritual nature. And LaVey explains how Satanists work very hard at influencing collective consciousness in order to achieve their objectives. He specifically mentions this in the Satanic Bible. Because the question was posed, it was a rhetorical question that he asked, and he answered it. He asked it of himself and he answered it. The question was, would Satanists spend their time taking their magic and, let's say, bending spoons as an example to show their power? And he says that's ridiculous. We would never spend our time doing that. We spend our time on shaping the consciousness of the masses so we can achieve our objectives and our goals. And this is important because that's what we're seeing today, and that's what we have seen for thousands of years, is this manipulation of consciousness. Because focused thoughts or focused thought energy creates reality. I mean, that's just from metaphysical perspective, and those who are into metaphysics will understand what I'm saying. It's how it works. It's how it works. And if it didn't work that way, they wouldn't be spending all their time and energy on trying to manipulate it, because that's what they're doing. They're manipulating it. Brainwashing people, propagandizing people, indoctrinating them, and training them. It's all the same thing. The end result is the same thing, to get you in a certain direction. And in order for you to be in that certain direction, you have to think about being in that direction. Because if you don't want to be there, you won't be there. So they have to manipulate the thought.
It's like the perfect fertilizer for their goals, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can't grow something and not nourish it, you can't put a plant in the ground and then give it no water and no light and nothing. It's not going to grow. So.
No, that's exactly right. That's a great analogy. You see, Sophia, they want perversion and dysfunction to prevail because an immoral, an ignorant, and a debauched world requires more policing. It requires more surveillance. It requires more control. So, they're covering all of their bases, They're usurping that consciousness, that energy, and at the same time, they are imprisoning humans into this material, physical world when, we're really supposed to be beings that have a tremendous connectedness into the spiritual realms, and we most of the world does not have that. And I know you know this, because I'm preaching to the choir, but that's why religion was created. Religion was created as a way to get people away from spirituality. It was created in order to display spirituality, and so when people they want to say religion is spirituality and spirituality is religion, that's completely wrong. It's not that at all. Religion is man-made dogma.
I'm getting the feeling, usually I'm more chatty in an interview, and I'm sitting here, it almost hurts my mind to try to understand really what you're saying. This is hard to understand, even by me, and I'm considered to know something about something, and I feel like I'm an ignoramus right now. But I think that what you just said, they want perversion and dysfunction to prevail because it requires more policing, controlling, regulation of us. That's very, very profound. And we aren't born that way. We aren't born horribly dysfunctional unless we have birth trauma and vaccines and, all the wrong entry into the world to start with. Then you could say we're born dysfunctional.
Right.
And bad, genetics and whatnot based on what our parents went through. So yeah, there's a definite desire to break down all forms of us between our psychic, psychological, emotional, biological, everything. It's so sad, really. I mean, now I'm getting sad. After my brain hurt, now I'm having to be sad. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
I know. Oh, but it does make you wonder that, maybe we then have, now I'm a little more inspired because I think, okay, we have more power than it seems, because if we don't let ourselves be played like this. So what I was saying earlier was you are disturbed, you must feel more disconnected than I do because you know more about this than I do. And all these other people are roaming the earth as, they're really the sheeple. They're in the net. They're in the consciousness net that they can't get out of because they need it, They really need it there.
Yeah.
That's why they don't want to talk about these things that you and I talk about. They don't have the capability. It takes a jump. You've really got to jump into the cold and the unknown to start wielding this new information in your brain.
Right. And originally, Sophia, going back many thousands of years ago when they had the mystery religions, and they had the initiates and the adepts, divine magic was supposed to be used by the initiates and the adepts to the benefit of the world and of humanity and all living things, So, and they couldn't give it out to everybody because they knew that it would be misused, and that's why it was kept, close to the vest. A lot of people will say, I can't believe, they kept it close to the vest and they wouldn't let it out. They should disseminate that information out to everybody. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I mean, no, that type of information, the stuff I'm talking about, that's got to be kept within a benevolent group to ensure that things work properly. And then what happened was, it got commandeered and it got taken over, as Miley P. Hall had said back about 80 years ago, by sorcery. By black magic.
That's it? 80 years ago?
80 years ago is when he said that in his book, when he came out with his book, yeah.
Oh, so he didn't say that 80 years ago this was taken over.
The quote was 80 years ago, where he said it has been replaced, divine magic has been replaced with sorcery.
But that has already gone on for a long time, way more than 80 years.
Right. That's right.
So we are descended from a long history. We're born into a long history of this perversion. And, it's no wonder we can barely begin to redo where the compass points. We're products of it.
We're products of it, and it's like you and I mentioned in another show, I think it was another show, where we said that, if you're born into a certain environment, that particular generation, that's what they know. I mean, they don't have any baseline. They don't have any point of reference to go back and say, oh, well, it wasn't like that. It's not how it used to be. As each generation progresses, if things don't change and things continue on the march, current course and speed, then, that's what they're going to know. That's the reality that they're going to know. And unfortunately, what's going to happen is it's going to be a reality that's going to be less and less connected to the divine, less connected to the spiritual connections that we have, and to the point where essentially people will be automatons. I mean, they will be functioning within this physicality, this physical world, this manifestation, and that's it. They'll be functioning. That's it. They won't have the creativity. They won't have the imagination. They won't have the spirituality. They won't have any of that stuff, And we're starting to see that today. I mean, at least I am. I'm seeing people behave that way. They don't have any inclination one way or another. They don't have any drive. They don't have any motivation. They don't persevere. They're essentially just inhaling and exhaling, and that's okay. That's okay. As long as I have my Xbox and my booze or my porn or whatever else, whatever other vice they have that they've connected to, it's okay.
As I was listening to you just now, it occurred to me that our basic instincts, our raw, intuitive, connected self is being wiped out then. And I don't think people consult their gut much anymore. And if and when they do, you have to ask, all right, what formed my gut instincts then, Right. I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, but someone recently told me that she had moved to the United States because she liked it. That was the only reason. I liked it when she visited.
Right.
And, knowing nothing about the underbelly of America and this is how people do things now, I think. They just do things because it seems nice.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a veneer. It's very superficial. There's no depth. Many people have no depth, Sophia. I mean, they really, they can't go deep inside, and they can't even answer the question if you ask them, who are you? They can't even answer that question. I think I mentioned in another show that, when you ask the question, and this was a conversation I had with Max Egan, when Max is on the show. Max had said, when you ask somebody, who are they? Many times they'll respond with what they do, their profession. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a whatever, But that's not the question that was asked. The question asked was, who are you? People don't contemplate anything, Sophia. They don't contemplate, existence. They don't contemplate what this is all about. They get on that hamster wheel and they just jog on it or run on it all day long for most of their lives, And there are those people that have stepped off and they've awakened. And I do believe that the awakening, it is happening. More and more people are waking up to what's going on. But the question becomes, is it at a rate and pace where we can cut this thing off? I'm hoping. I really am. I'm optimistic about it. It's why I do the work that I do. But more and more people really have to, I'll tell you, they have to check in. Too many people are checked out.
So we covered Miley, and now do you want to tell us about Bruce?
Well, Bruce Jenner, to me, is, let me just pull up my notes here on Bruce real quick here so that I can... Yeah, so with Bruce, he is more representative to me of Baphomet than even Miley Cyrus. So when you take a look at Bruce, when I take a look at him, I take a look at his face. He has this very large face. It's almost like, in some pictures, and some people are probably going to chuckle at this, it's almost very goat-like looking, It's this big masculine face on his body, right? And they're trying to camouflage it with his hair and everything else to make it look feminine. But, think about Bruce Jenner, right? So first of all, we got this big head. It's not attractive. Just like, we look at Baphomet, the goat's head. You said, hey, look, it's kind of scary looking. It's not appealing. He's got breasts. Right? He's got the female breasts. And he clearly has male plumbing, which, based upon my research and what I've read, he has no intentions of ever changing. So, when I take a look at him, I think to myself, well, he is a walking, talking version of Baphomet. Mm-hmm. And so why is it that there's so much focus on him, So it's the whole transhumanism thing comes into play because we talked about the whole androgynous aspect of Baphomet and the whole transgender aspect of it and the gender fluidity. That piece of it. To me, that all plays into androgyny, and that androgyny plays into, transgender, and that transgender plays into ultimately a transhuman society. So it's all this conditioning that's going on, and look, it's a freak show. Let's just call it what it is. To me, it's a freak show. When I watch this whole thing go on with Miley Cyrus, with Nana, with Bruce Jenner, it's not something that we're supposed to be, that we should be paying attention to. We should call it what it is. But unfortunately, many people are mesmerized by it. They love it. They can't get enough of it.
I always wondered why in the re-engineering of Bruce Jenner's face into Caitlyn, why a certain look was picked, because plastic surgery can do almost anything. And
Right.
the long face, you're
Right.
right, with the hair that looks like the horns, because she's always got that wavy hair, masses of it around whatever,
Right.
its face. And yes, you're right, the breasts now and the long, skinny legs, the goatee legs, and then the male parts.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I had thought of the whole gender fluidity, transgender stuff, of course, and the focus on that. I thought there was a way of normalizing this transition for humanity.
Right.
But I didn't see the connection visually to the Baphomet figure.
Right. So you have to ask yourself, why would they do that? Is it just because they want to have fun with him? Or is it because there is a reason and a purpose behind doing that? Oh, I'm going to vote that there's a reason and a purpose for it, because nothing that they do is by chance. I mean, everything is planned out. Everything is strategic. Everything is based upon a vision that they have. It's not because they want to goof around with this guy and mess him up. He's being utilized, and he's being utilized for a particular reason.
Yeah, over a long, long time.
Over a long time. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. That's the other thing. All of these people, they've been in programs for a very, very long time. Many of them were born into these programs. And I'm talking about these programs, I'm talking about mind control programs like that come under the umbrella of MK Ultra. They're born into them. So this is a way of life for them. They don't even know anything any different,
Mm-hmm.
The indoctrination started from the moment they left the womb. Some people would say, well, how could Bruce Jenner do what he did? Well, maybe Bruce Jenner doesn't even think that what he's doing there's anything odd or wrong with it. The conditioning could be that this is how it was always going to be, Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you were going to wind up here. And so it's just in his mind, it's a natural progression to the end state, which is what we're seeing today. I mean, but this is the thing, people also don't understand the magnitude of the mind control program, Sophia. They think it's a one-off. They think it happens every once in a while. They don't understand that mind control is extremely pervasive. The mind control programs, very, very pervasive.
Right, and they exist in their own pyramidic structure. The masses are at the bottom, milling around like ants under mind control, and then you've got layers of smaller, concentrations above them in terms of numbers and particular people on each level picked. And we do respond to reward, human beings, so it's easy to condition us with a reward system, whether that's fame or money or just something feel good or special attention, or the reverse, the pain as a stimulus, and to push us further into our own demise.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid. Now I'm getting all bollocksed up again in my brain, because when you contemplate how many different ways we can be manipulated, we can manipulate ourselves. I mean, I was once told many, many years ago by some psychology specialist, I don't remember how I learned this, or I think it was in a book I read, that people can operate with diametrically opposed beliefs, all the time. People do it all the time because their own lives are segmented.
Right.
And an example of that would be somebody who's like a very skilled ballerina or something, and she has a very abusive home life. And so on the one hand, on the stage, from the audiences, she gets all kinds of recognition from her teachers, but at home, she gets pain. So she has to carry the self-concept of I'm very, very good, and I'm also very, very bad.
Right. They're able to compartmentalize.
Yeah, and so you have to live with that self-image, and we do it all the time,
It's the same premise behind having alters in a mind control program. You're able to, silo certain personalities, put them in buckets, and when you need them, they come forth. When you don't need them, they go back in the bucket type of thing. So in your example, I mean, this person's be able to compartmentalize. I get these accolades outside when I'm performing. When I come home, it's abusive.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this dualistic, existence, and she functions. How does she do it? She does it by compartmentalizing. But many people live like that, Sophia. Many, many people have that type of dynamic in their life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I realize that. I mean, it's a fascinating thing to contemplate and then to look at yourself and say, okay, where do I have beliefs that are diametrically opposed? That I'm constantly having to fit myself around and into,
yeah.
So,
There is one. What I want to do before we depart here is there's a great video that's on YouTube. It's called "Manipulating Matter One Molecule at a Time," and the YouTube channel is Secret Key Activator. So it's one word, Secret Key Activator, and I'll put it in the show notes. I'll send you a link. He does an excellent job of explaining sigils and thought energy and how it works and how thoughts manifest reality. So I'll put that in the show notes.
yeah, no, I'll link that. Very fascinating, Mike. Thank you very much. I have a new notebook. You've opened a new blank notebook for me.
Well, you could bring me back anytime for happy topics.
Well, this, given your, I call it training, but it's really like a knowledge and it's a skill as well. And it's probably a passion and a love, this hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
I think that you are a very, very well qualified person to introduce listeners to this kind of material and to get them to depart from jumping to the conclusion that Baphomet is bad and these symbols are all bad and dangerous, which is the way I've been thinking also. You go tisk, tisk, tisk when you see something.
I used to too, Sophia. I used to think the same way until I started digging into it, and it took me a while to pull myself away from how I used to think. I had to I had to keep going back at it until finally I snapped that programming, and I was able to come to grips with the fact that okay, let's proceed. So it's very normal to have that reaction to those symbols.
So what if when you see, a video of Miley Cyrus doing this gross stuff on stage and looking like Baphomet, what if you, instead of disapproving of that contextual situating of Baphomet, what if you say, oh no, it's really about ascension, and this symbol to me represents ascension, and that's what I'm going to think about? Is there a way to do that?
I guess you could. I guess you could do that. I mean, I guess you could. I would say that you are up against tremendous odds. In other words, here's your energy right here. Your thoughts are here, and here's everybody else here, right? The best thing to do, in my opinion, is to not watch it at all because it shuts off the fuel. It just turns it off. It's like, think of it as like not putting gas in your car. What they're asking you to do is to put gas in their car so that they can run it. And what everybody needs to do is just not fill that tank up. Just shut it off. Yeah.
Well, what if you happen to see, I mean, we're handling dollar bills every day and they have the Illuminati eye on them. And I mean, I suppose you don't look for the eye every time you fish around in your wallet for dollars.
No.
But if you happen to see it, then you'll have to disengage somehow from the psychic aspect of it. I don't know. I'm just kind of inquiring. You can go to all digital. You can never touch greenbacks,
right.
FRNs. That's one way to do it. But all digital is a part of their scheme as well. So I'm just trying to figure out ways to quickly correct the error direction,
Yeah, like I said, Sophia, I think people need to turn it off. Like as an example with the money thing, right? The money, so many people are so focused on money, making money, buying things and everything else. So if you want to shut the money thing down to the point where it's not being used for nefarious reasons, stop consuming. Stop consuming stuff that you don't need. Buy what you need to function and to live and everything else. Stop buying all the other crap. Don't participate in Black Friday. Don't participate Cyber Monday. Don't be buying out, Walmart for Christmas. And if people start thinking that way, and they start investing their thoughts and their energies into more positive aspects of their life, like let's say something novel like their family and their friends, then you'll turn that around.
Very good, Mike.
Well, thank you, Sophia.
No, that was very inspiring right there. I mean, I wish you could be on television.
Yeah.
No. I'm kidding, because
Okay.
we don't want to turn it on just to find you either.
Yeah, and I'm apt to say things that sometimes that will be censored. I'm not, I've been known to blurt some things out.
No, but that was a very, very exciting little suggestion that you just gave.
That's what I do. I mean, I have my one vice. I'm a musician, so I have my instruments. You can see them behind me. The people on the show won't see them, but other than that, Sophia, I mean, I try to keep my life as very basic. I try very, very difficult not to overindulge in spending and consumerism. I mean, I live a very simple, basic life from that perspective. Aside, again, I'm a musician, so I'm going to have musical instruments, and it's a love. But I don't buy stuff for the sake of buying stuff. I don't pay any attention to that stuff. I don't even know what TVs are out there now. I couldn't even tell you anything about an iPad. I don't have one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about that stuff. So, and I don't care to know anything about that stuff. I function very well without it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, Mike, you've given us a lot of food for thought. This is a very powerful interview, I think. I'm sitting here again, kind of swirling around. But I'm grateful to you, and I think this is an interview worth listening to more than once. Even though I'm scared to listen to my own shows, I will listen again.
I'm the same way.
Nobody likes it. It's only when certain people, you'll hear feedback and people go, that was a great show.
Yeah.
And then you tentatively ask, did I sound like a fool? No.
That's because you pick yourself apart. I do that all the time. I criticize myself. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I should have phrased it this way. So I usually put the shows out there and I let them ride. I don't typically go back and listen to them either.
No, but then you miss the content that your guest has given. And a lot of this material is worth listening to several times, because you catch things. The mind can only field a few things at a time. And then when you listen again, you get deeper, and then you get deeper and deeper. Read that Manly Hall book a few more times.
Right. And like I said, Sophia, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just expressing what I have learned in my research to date. That's it. And it's just built a foundation for me as a springboard to move forward. But it's given me enough information to know what to look out for.
Well, it's excellent information. I'm grateful to you, and my listeners, our listeners will be grateful, are grateful. A-R-E-O-U-R. Homonyms. All right. Well, thank you, Mike Williams, the sage of Quay. You truly are that. You have every right to be the sage.
Thank you, Sophia.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You'll come back. I promise you.
Absolutely.